What's it like to live in a home that's become a national landmark? We toured one in Phoenix.
You're listening to Travel FOMO, a podcast for people self-diagnosed with wanderlust.
Welcome to the Travel FOMO podcast. My name is Hilarie Houghton, and I am here in my home with my husband, Jamin, and our home is a little less touristy.
We don't sell a lot of tickets.
No.
It's not a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
No, not a national landmark either.
And the guided tour does not take very long.
Good point. It really does not. We are in the middle of nowhere season of the Travel FOMO podcast. And today we are taking you to Phoenix, where we do a handful of activities. We only had one day in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Traffic was mad, crazy.
Yeah.
And we ended up doing a little bit of outdoors, a little bit of indoors. Did some hiking, which you just can't go to Phoenix without doing some hiking. And then we did Taliesin West, a tour of a famous home. We'll tell you more about that. And then we went to the movies, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. we were doing stuff like that for us, like a little more like fun stuff as our adventure kind of wrapped up. But I think if someone could have rode along for our day in Phoenix, they would have seen what most of our travel consists of, which is you saying that there are 10 things that we must have to do. Me saying that it's humanly possible to do 5 things. And we end up doing like 7.
That's probably true. Yeah, that sounds about right. I always have a very long list. Want to make the most of every minute. But literally in Phoenix, it is not possible to check all the boxes in a day because the infrastructure on their roads, they are not cut out for you to just zip around all day. So
yeah, the traffic there was prohibitive time-wise.
Right.
So we only got to do just a handful of things, but the things we did were really cool and fun.
That's true. Well, and so we were coming in from Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico and then made our way up. We were basically staying in a campground that's between Tucson and Phoenix. So if you think about that as well, we were like coming from, outside of Phoenix into Phoenix for the day. And we stayed a couple nights at Picacho, Tucson, Northwest KOA. We stayed at a KOA basically, but it was wonderful. We really liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is
nice.
definitely, you're in the desert. So think of a KOA campground that's like made of rock,
Right.
But it's beautiful. And I just loved it because they had lemon trees and orange trees and rosemary bushes and all of this stuff that they were like, oh yeah, it's free for everyone to take as they want. And so I was getting to incorporate it into our meals and everything. And I just thought that was really cool. And not something I would expect from a KOA campground, maybe from a little mom and pop place.
Right.
But not from a KOA campground. And
yeah,
they did a good job
I
with
really liked that KOA. I will say, like, RVing in Phoenix is interesting because we were there in November, which is the absolute perfect time to be there. The weather was beautiful, great for RVing, but the weather's beautiful is great for RVing. And I think there are a ton of people that spend months RVing there during that time of the year. So I remember trying to find a place that could get us in for just a couple days. It was really difficult. But this KOA was a perfect spot to land, a little outside the city. It was a drive in, but it was a great spot.
Yeah. Well, and some quick facts about Phoenix. It is the 6th largest city in the U.S., and it sits right in the middle of the Sonoran Desert, which is great.
I was surprised that it was as big as it was, especially considering that it is in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Like there's not really anything close by. It's out and it's beautiful there. You definitely understand why people want to be there.
Right.
But it's so secluded to itself and so massive.
Well, and you looked up some interesting facts about how it is that it exists out there in the middle of a desert. Like how is that even humanly possible without water?
Yeah, there was a Native American people, and I'm probably going to butcher the name, but it's the Hohokam, Hohokam. And they lived there from like 800 AD to like 1400 AD. And they developed this system of canals to irrigate the area essentially. And their like canal system was the basis for the origins of Phoenix and the origins of the city, and still patterned after what they set up today.
That's awesome.
And we don't know what happened to them. They disappeared in the 1400s, possibly drought, possibly driven out by other Native American groups. We don't have any idea, but they kind of like laid the footprint for what is now that area of Arizona and Phoenix.
That's so cool. They like made it possible.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, and you had also looked up some interesting facts about air conditioning and how, I mean, you can imagine how important that is for everyone who lives out in Phoenix.
Yes.
I mean, like literally your life depends on it kind of thing.
Well, it's one of the hottest cities in the U.S. They routinely have stretches of days during the summer where it's over 110 for, long stretches of days. Like we're not just talking like a day or two. So it gets so hot there. But before the invention of air conditioning, people would actually move their beds outside to sleep at night. And some people would like build their homes with like big porches, and they would call them sleeping porches.
That's
move
crazy.
all the beds out there. Some people would just move them out like into their yards under the stars, and it became this like neighborhood thing that you would like wave to your neighbors as you went to bed every night out
so
on
weird.
in your front yard.
Becomes a little less intimate.
Yeah. That's not, I don't know how well I would sleep.
Yeah, exactly. That's crazy. And I mean, the first thing, when you told me that, the first thing I thought of was like, what about the wildlife? Because let's be honest, there are probably mountain lions and snakes and scorpions and all kinds of things. I don't know how I feel about my bed living outside.
Yeah. But I think there's just a lot about deserts in general that want to kill you, and I think you just have to embrace that if you're going to live in the middle of the desert.
That's true. Yeah.
I've always said I don't want to live in a place where if I get locked outside I could die, and I think it probably qualifies.
Yeah. Other interesting facts about Phoenix is that it's, just by a stroke of luck that we don't call it Pumpkinville, because when they were like looking up names for this place, they were brainstorming, and one of the things that came up was Pumpkinville because wild pumpkins grew in the valley there, which I thought that was another really interesting fact. You were the one doing our fact search, so I thought, oh, that's crazy.
It's a little less appealing.
Yeah.
To say that you're from Pumpkinville than Phoenix. But, yeah. Well, and they also like all the, there's like 15 Major League Baseball teams that do the spring training in Phoenix. And they have like, they all play each other in what's called like the Cactus League. And so if you're a big baseball fan, spring training in Phoenix would be a really cool place. And there's tons of golf courses. I think there's like 200 golf courses and things like that. So it's definitely... It's crazy that it is such an extreme environment, but so many people go there to do outdoor things.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Like hiking. We really kicked off our day with hiking, and we decided to do it outside the city, something on the south where it was a little closer to our campground. It was great.
Yeah, it was just kind of on our way as we were making our way into the city. We hiked the Pima Wash Trail. We chose it because it was dog friendly. We could take Maggie with us. There's a lot of trails out there. I think if we had done the whole trail, it would have been like 6 miles. We didn't do that because we just didn't have time. It was less than 1,000 feet of elevation gain that we did. So not super aggressive, like just a nice hike. It was very beautiful. And we actually saw a lot of the saguaro cactus, which is the classic like old Western cactus that you see.
Mm-hmm.
But in all of our outdoor adventures that we did all over the US, like this was the only place that we hiked and saw that kind of cactus. It's actually a pretty rare thing to see in the wild, and getting to see so many of them everywhere was pretty cool on that trail. They're kind of only in the Sonoran Desert, which is like this part of Arizona into California and Mexico. So it's a very limited, like sort of geographical area that you have to go to see them. And Phoenix is kind of right on the edge of that. So you get to see them there.
Gotcha. Yeah. we did that, and then we had to make our way back to get ready for the day. So
yeah, get cleaned up.
But I definitely am glad we got in the hiking. It was worth it.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. And great views of the city.
Yeah, it was really cool.
We cleaned up, and then we went back into the city and headed toward Scottsdale, where we went to Frank Lloyd Wright's Taliesin West, which, not everybody names their homes, but Frank Lloyd Wright did.
Yeah, when you're Frank Lloyd Wright, you get to name everything that you put together.
Exactly. And this was a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a National Historic Landmark, and it's unique from most heritage sites and national landmarks because it is a home. It's Frank Lloyd Wright's winter home, and he was a famous architect whose career spanned like 70 years.
Yeah.
Which is a long time to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bless his heart.
That is a long time to work. But I think he was just so passionate about it, and he was so good at it, and everyone wanted to learn from him. And I mean, by the time that he created Taliesin West, it's really kind of interesting because he did it like he built a home for himself, but also basically an architect school. Because he had like studio there where all of his architects that worked for him, where he could just teach them all right there and just kind of incorporate his life into his work, into passing his work down all in one kind of place. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, it is cool. I love that all of his like different buildings and homes that he creates are really embedded into the structure of the land around it. So like this is up on a mountain. It looks like it fits in with the mountain, although it's also very funky and modern looking in its own right, even though it was built in 1937, which is wild.
I mean, I honestly couldn't believe that it was built that early.
Me too.
It looks like something from the 70s, like if you
from
see
the Brady
like,
Bunch time frame.
Right. If you see like really sleek modern homes in the 70s with like sleek lines and straight lines and sort of clean and multi-levels and all those kinds of things that you think of, not from the 30s.
Right.
And so it just shows you how much he like broke with convention and thought outside the box and really pioneered the way that I think later on people were like, okay, now maybe we've caught up enough to mass produce what he was creating.
Yeah, totally. He did such a nice job of making it futuristic beyond the years that he was alive. It's so cool. I mean, if we were there during the 1930s, we would have thought this is like kind of like we saw the Jetsons cartoon whenever we were little. It reminds me of that. But and just to kind of help you guys identify where in Phoenix this is. So it's on the outskirts of Scottsdale, and it's in kind of like tucked into the McDowell Mountains, and it overlooks Phoenix. It's got this great view. He actually has this great quote where he says that Taliesin West is like looking over the rim of the world. And I thought that was pretty cool. And you can imagine it faces the sun setting. And so you're looking out over the city at night while the sun's setting, and you've got the perfect view.
It had so much to it. Sort of like we talked about, he did a lot of work there. He worked with his other architects that worked for him there. And so they have like a studio, and then there's dining facilities. There's theaters and a workshop and his office, and then his private living quarters and residence, and the place for his wife and his wife's office, and all this stuff on this sort of complex that now you get to see. And we took an audio tour, and it's just connected through this all these walkways and terraces and pools and gardens, and you're sort of constantly going outside to inside's being brought in to the rooms, and it all has this flow to it that's just really amazing.
I think you mean like outside coming in, bringing the outside in. Yeah, absolutely. And it is massive, to your point. And even there was residences for his apprentices and staff too. So imagine it's a little bit of a compound in a way.
Right. Yeah.
It's big. It's big enough that like you can take tours of it. Tickets are limited, so I will put that out there. And they really do recommend having advanced reservations. So if you're thinking about doing that, really recommend that. We did a self-guided audio tour. You literally use your own phone and your headphones, which is super convenient.
Yeah,
but
that was nice.
you want to make sure that your phone is charged and that you have your headphones.
Bring your headphones. Yeah.
And then that was $44. So it's like not a drop in the bucket.
It's pretty pricey for an audio tour, it felt
Right.
like. But
Right.
amazing to see. To see.
And then there were other tours available as well. Like you could do something with a tour guide. You could do something behind the scenes. You could even do a small group family tour, they call it. So there's a lot of different options. They do get pricier.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a step up.
Yeah. But it's pretty cool. And I think for me, it was kind of my exposure to Frank Lloyd Wright.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very much an educational opportunity. And so I think that was, to me, the perk of it all, is that I was introduced to something I wouldn't otherwise have been.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of one of those names that you hear, like Frank Lloyd Wright is a recognizable name, but until you like really go and dive into something like this, you might understand that he's an architect, or that he designed the Guggenheim in New York City or whatever. But until you really like go and learn about it, it just kind of floats around out there. And I feel like the tour there really gives you context into who he was and the way he thought, and sort of where he drew his inspiration. A lot of his inspiration comes from the landscape and things around him. And I remember them talking us through how he would create narrow entries into expansive spaces, because he wanted it to feel like you were walking out of the woods into like an open meadow, and how it would like open up before you, and you get that feeling of like walking through something into something expansive, and how he would draw from nature, and even Taliesin West sort of built into the side of the hill, and places on it like overlook the next thing and overlook the next step. And just all that drawing from nature really made me think of when we went to Barcelona. Mm-hmm. And we saw all of the Gaudí buildings, and we toured Casa Batlló, and it was like the ocean, and he wanted to create this flow that he saw within the ocean. And it's just amazing to me, people's minds that work that way. Mm-hmm. That see something in nature and go, okay, I'm going to translate this into a building. Mm-hmm. And it's just not how my brain works. And so it's fascinating to me to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You know what it actually reminds me of too, is that like there is truly nothing new under the sun. I say that sometimes, but I think that's fascinating, because even as man, we are trying to mimic nature. Right. And that's where we are getting our inspiration and trying to mimic it. I think that's fascinating. And when we were kind of doing our research and reminding ourselves of these things leading up to recording this podcast, we looked up waterfall, which is the name of another, I don't know if it's a home or a building, but I think it's a home that Frank Lloyd Wright created. And it is layered in a way just like you would see a waterfall with all these different levels. It's layered, and it's also layered over a waterfall, and you just see this cascade from like cascading building to cascading water. And I don't know, I thought that was really cool. I do think that's interesting though, that like that's where we find our inspiration, is from literally what God created, Yeah,
I think it's really cool that these guys were talented enough and gave themselves space to go out into nature, gain inspiration, and then come back and take the time to use that inspiration and what they did every day and use it in their designs. And I think so many times we're on to the next thing, and we segment our lives so much, and we're like, well, I'm done with my nature walk now. That part's over. And now I'm moving on to work, and I'm going to do my work stuff. And then I'm going to hang up on work and do the next thing. And we don't let that inspiration inspire all the things we do. We're just like, oh, inspired now, and go on and like shut the door, next thing.
Yeah.
And I just, I wish I knew better how to like let those inspirational moments actually inspire the next phase, the next thing.
Yeah. It also reminds me now that we're talking about it, Shenandoah National Park and the camp there that was for the president at the time, President Roosevelt.
Rapidan camp.
Yeah, Camp Rapidan for President Roosevelt. Am I remember that?
Not Roosevelt. It wasn't Roosevelt.
We did a little Q&A with me and I got them all wrong. I'm going to start that over so that we're not fishing for it. That also reminds me of Shenandoah National Park and the camp there for the president at the time, Camp Rapidan, and how he was so inspired by nature. And that was like so important for him to go rest, rejuvenate, even do work from the great outdoors because it was so important to him and embedding that in his life. Anyway, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
We've seen some interesting homes since we have been traveling. Some of the other things that we did. Well, wait, anything else about Taliesin West before we move on?
No, I did. I definitely recommend it. It was pricey, and I remember looking at the ticket price and being like, do we really want to do that? Mm-hmm. But being glad that we did.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And I mean, down to every detail, which is also really interesting. It's kind of like he spared no expense when he created different homes. Mm-hmm. He literally did whatever was going to be the most interesting or the most architecturally pleasing. And it never felt like he limited his creativity in any way.
Yeah, no compromises. He was going to go all the way.
Yeah, for sure. And then after that, we made our way down to Old Town Scottsdale. There is a lot there that we didn't get to do. We will tell you guys about some of the things that you can do in the area. But we grabbed dinner at the Montauk, which was great. It had some great vibes. It had a live DJ literally playing at like 6 p.m., which was maybe a little much. But
I think that place probably gets pretty rowdy. If I had to guess, just from the way that it seemed to be headed. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's necessarily what we were going for when we first walked in, but the food was really, really good. The service was great. It's a fun little spot.
It was. It was so loud though. We actually didn't speak the whole time.
Yeah. It was really loud and then not full enough yet for it to be as loud as it was.
For it to make sense, yeah.
But later in the night, I'm sure it was very appropriate.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we went and saw a movie. We were wanting to kind of take some time to do stuff kind of just for us. And at that time in 2022, Spirited had just come out with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. And so we were like, yeah, we like both of them. Let's go see it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we did. Like, it's a really good little Christmas movie and become one that now we watch every year.
We really like the music from it too. So I love listening to the soundtrack even at Christmas, even if I'm not getting to see the movie. So it's a good one. I kind of feel like it could become a classic, but it's only on Apple Plus and they're not letting it go anywhere else. So I think that's really, they're limiting themselves, I feel like.
Hilarie's going to do her Apple rant.
I'm just saying. And, we've been on Apple Plus for a month or two and we like it.
Yeah, it is fun to see movies in different places. I know a lot of times vacations are so short that you're like, I don't want to spend my time that way because it does take a chunk of time. But when you do see a movie in another place, the next time you see that movie on, it'll always kind of pull you back. Mm-hmm. Like anytime I see anything Top Gun, I think of being in Cannes. And anytime I see Spirited or anything Spirited, I think of being in Scottsdale. And so it is a kind of a fun way to make something that's going to pop up randomly in your life again and will take you back to a trip.
Yeah. My most favorite movie experience while traveling, I think, would be when we were in Bar Harbor and we went to Don't Worry, Darling.
Yeah.
at that really old
It's a
1920s
really cool
theater.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so cool. That's the kind of experience I think we're really looking forward to when we travel and go to the movies. But okay, so here are some surprising things about Phoenix that we discovered along the way. And I have to kick that off with the traffic. It was very congested,
Yeah.
but in an infrastructure way, not like in a, oh gosh, there's so many people on the road. It was more like, oh, they've got really tiny little roads and streets that aren't built to support all of the traffic that they have. And we literally needed like a couple of hours between spots.
Yeah. The traffic there was difficult to deal with, and made us do a lot less stuff than we had originally wanted to do, as we've kind of said. And I feel like there are places where traffic's just rough and it's not ready for it. Like if you go to a place like Chicago, like there's a lot of traffic there, but there's also a lot of public transportation and stuff. And so I feel like the city's more ready for it. Whereas like places like Phoenix or even like Dallas and Houston, there's just no good public transportation options. And maybe there is in Phoenix and we just didn't know about it or didn't know how to use it. But in those places where you have to have a car to get around and everybody has a car and everybody's getting around, it just makes for gridlock a lot of times.
It's very tricky, but I did notice a lot of construction, so it seemed like they were working to address it. So that's good.
Yeah. One thing that we did find that was a pleasant surprise was that the groceries that we found in Phoenix were pretty cheap and the produce was pretty great. I remember kind of being shocked by how good the fresh produce and stuff was in Phoenix. And, you know, we'd been shopping in a lot of grocery stores all over the country. And so it really stuck out to us there that like, oh, wow, like it's really affordable to get some great produce here.
Yeah. I remember even hearing somebody next to me in the grocery store being like, wow, this is really cheap here. And I'm like, I know, it's great. So it felt like we could eat really healthy. For really affordable.
Right.
It's amazing. And then also I was really surprised always at how cold the desert can be. It always takes me by surprise. It's, you just imagine it to be so hot and you imagine it to cool off at night and not necessarily to get so extremely cold at night. So
yeah, once the sun goes down, it gets pretty chilly pretty fast.
Yeah.
But Hilarie will also tell you that everywhere is cold. So take Hilarie's cold advice with a grain of salt.
I like my sunshine. I just don't expect it to come with coats at night. So some additional recommendations for you guys. There were a list of things that I wanted us to get to do while we were there and we didn't get to. The top thing on my list for next time I return would be to do the Camelback hike. And that is inside the city. It would be, if you're staying within Phoenix, it would be much easier opportunity to hike.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's much more extreme. So definitely something to think of. It wasn't also dog friendly for Maggie, so that became another barrier for us, if I'm remembering correctly. There's also the Arizona Boardwalk, the Desert Botanical Garden. It was recommended by our friend Colby. So thanks, Colby, for mentioning that. We didn't get to hit it up, but now it's on our list for next time. Goldfield Ghost Town and Mine Tours. It would be a full day trip outside of Phoenix, but it would be a really fun thing, I think, for families.
Yeah.
It definitely looks like a big tourist attraction. And then also, we were right there, but didn't get to hit it up. The old Adobe Mission Historic Church is right there in Old Town Scottsdale. And I thought that would have been so cool, but honestly, traffic prohibited us from getting there before it closed. And so we didn't get to hit it up, but
yeah,
a lot of cool things.
We just missed it.
Yeah. And there's probably so much more I don't even know about. Obviously, people always go to Phoenix to do spa day and resorts and golfing. So that's certainly an addition to all of this too.
Yeah, there's so much there that we didn't get to explore. Such a great city. It was really fun to be in a city again. Like we had been in the middle of nowhere for a while.
Right.
And so it was fun to get to be kind of back in a city. We really like exploring cities. And so that change of pace was really nice.
Totally.
If you're tired of exploring cities, you're in the right place, because next up, we're headed back out in the middle of nowhere to Joshua Tree National Park. You've probably heard about it. Joshua Tree is pretty trendy. A lot of people mention it. There were some surprises for us, and we are excited to tell you all about them. So make sure that you are subscribed from wherever you watch and or listen, because that's where we're headed next.
That's right. And you guys can follow us on social media right now. We are out there on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and of course YouTube. And we'd love for you to subscribe on YouTube, because we do film the places that we go to, and we put out videos for you guys, so you can go out and check out the hiking that we did. You can see Taliesin West for yourself, and it's actually really worth a click. Go out there, do it, and then click the notification bell while you're out there, and it'll help alert you to other videos that come out along the way.
Absolutely. And if you want to reach out to us directly, you can do that through email at travelfomopodcast@gmail.com. Drop us a line. Let us know where we should be traveling to. We're always looking for our next trip. So any recommendations you have, give it to us there. If there's something we can help you with, that's a good way to reach out to us as well.
Awesome. Life is short, guys.
Wander well.